Good evening and welcome to African Voices platform. My name is Chihana, and tonight's show is all about the upcoming elections in Uganda. Uganda Decides 2021 takes place on the 14th of January 2021. I'm joined in the studio by my colleague Baillor Jalloh, and we've got a guest from the National Unity Platform Party, as well as People Power Coordinator from Washington, D.C., Kharim Ntambi. Firstly, good evening, Baillor, and who's our guest tonight?
Hello, good evening. As you mentioned there, our special guest tonight is Kharim Ntambi, based in the United States, specifically in Washington, D.C. Hi, Kharim.
Hi, thank you so much for having me and sharing the platform with all of us, Africans in the diaspora. Thank you so much.
Well, as Tchiyiwe mentioned, we are discussing the upcoming elections in Uganda today, and the elections will be held on Thursday, the 14th of January. There are 11 candidates, and the two main challenges are long-term leader Yoweri Museveni, who has been in power since 1986. And if he wins this year's election, this will be his sixth term in office. And the main challenger is Robert Kyagulanyi, commonly known as Bobi Wine, a former pop star in Uganda, but now becoming a politician. So we will be discussing the upcoming election, as we mentioned, and also how the campaign has been going and how the way forward for the country. So Kharim, you are representing the NUP party. So let's start with how preparations have been going so far in terms of the campaign.
Thank you so much. The preparations have been going on well. Unfortunately, a week ago, the government of Uganda, using the military apparatus, raided a campaign trail in Kalangala, the island. They arrested over 126 campaign agents for Bobi Wine. So we halfway stripped of what we had. All the manpower, all our foot soldiers, most of them are still in jail. And he was also arrested on that day. He was arrested, he was put into a helicopter to Kampala, and he got house arrest on that similar day. So up to now, we are still waiting for most of our comrades, and those were the ones that we were depending on to help us guard the vote, do groundwork, reach out to our local polling station agents and give them material. But now 126 of them are still missing. And some of them, when we asked them to be produced, they got produced into the court martial. And there were allegations that the military forces went into some of their agents' houses and found ammunition. Same thing they did to Honorable Kyagulanyi 3 years ago in Arua. They framed him, they brought weapons, and they say they had found them in a hotel which he had just rented, and they put him in a military court martial, and later the charges were dropped. So right now we are looking at going into an election which is not free and fair, where Museveni has used intimidation tactics. Right now there are so many army vehicles within that given respective towns, especially Kampala and Masaka. Most of the places where we thought where we have more support, especially in the central region, Honorable Kyagulanyi wasn't allowed to campaign there. By the time when the dates for those areas came closer, the Electoral Commission announced that those places were high risk for COVID. So Museveni had already traversed them, but when it was our turn, he cut them off. So that's the kind of campaign we have been running. I think last week you saw while Honorable Kyagulanyi was having an interview on Zoom.
Can I cut in a little bit there before we go into the next bit that you wanted to get into? I really want to focus a little bit on the 126 people that you say are your foot soldiers that have been arrested, and that your leader, Kyagulanyi, Bobi Wine, as he's famously known, was also arrested during that time. Of course, that's a derailment to a campaign, but could you explain the circumstances under which these people were arrested? Does it have anything to do with the COVID restrictions that have been imposed on the country?
No. At first, the government spokesman said there was going to be chaos at the island. So they hadn't even reached the destination where the campaign was supposed to go. As they got off the ferry, they got ambushed in the middle of a forest. They put them on packed them on military vehicles and took them to different places. Actually, up to now, some of them, we are not sure which prisons they are. They haven't yet been produced to court. And when they produced some of them in court, some of them had been badly injured, some of them had been brutalized, and one of them fainted in court. And the magistrate was willing to hear a case while one of the accused people had fainted. It was like, okay, get that one out, and the court continued. So those are some of the circumstances that, you know, this election is going through.
So you clearly are declaring that these elections are already not free and fair, given how short a period of time, and obviously there are people that are missing that are not accounted for. What does this mean, though? How are you converting your campaign to align with the ruling party at the moment? How are they campaigning at present in comparison to yourselves? Because we understand that there have been restrictions as far as foot soldiering is concerned. So how are you matching up to that now that there's this barrier that you've had to face?
So one, at the beginning of the campaign, it was supposed to be what they had called a scientific campaign, where people were supposed to be using the media, were supposed to be using online platforms. However, most of the members that are running for parliament, and Honorable Kyagulanyi himself at the beginning of the campaign, wouldn't be allowed to be on TV. But the president would come on TV in the form of giving a national address, like he's doing, I think he's doing one today. He calls them national addresses in where he campaigns, and he would order all TV stations to broadcast and show what he's doing. On the other hand, the opposition has not been given a fair chance to campaign on online platforms. And as we speak, I heard Andrew Mwenda was supposed to be with us today. Right now, the internet is kind of hazy in Uganda. They have we had hoped that we would be using the online platforms as the days come closer to January 14th, but the internet is now on and off. They have tried to sabotage and hack into social media platforms that align with National Unity Platform and the opposition. So it is really, we are already in the fight against repression, you could say. We are trying our best. The good thing is our people are confident, the masses are on our side. So whichever tactics the junta is trying to use this time, we are going to find ways to circumnavigate them until we triumph.
Okay, so before I bring my colleague Baillor into this one, I'll just shift a little bit from the current tensions that you're undergoing and focus a little more on the actual election, the electorate itself. So it's a big fight for the youth vote. 75% of Uganda's population is below the age of 34, I understand. Does that put you at a vantage point, given that you are very much a party of the youth, and do you see that working to your advantage in this election?
I mean, it puts us at the advantage. 75% is under the age of 35, and almost 65 of those are 65 of those people are unemployed. They are unemployed, and they are unemployed.
5% of people aged below of working age that are up to the age of 35, you're saying 65% are unemployed.
Yes, most of those young people are unemployed and they are looking for employment. So National Unit Platform comes here to rescue and offer opportunity to all these young people. So when Honorable Kyagulanyi came up, everyone was like, okay, we understand the story. He has gone through the same struggles like most of us, and why not support him this time?
Speaking of those supports, though, as we mentioned at the beginning, Museveni has been there for years, and he is regarded in the country as the father of the nation, as someone who fought oppression or the regime of Idi Amin. And since then, there has been peace and prosperity in the country, if I may say that. But looking at it from a different angle as well, there has been so many opposition that has been kind of trying to come to power in the country, but many of them unsuccessful. And as you mentioned, some of them sometimes being arrested, some detained due to some political, to what human rights campaigners have called as political reasons. What makes you think Bobi Wine will be successful?
Thank you so much for that question. I think Honorable Kyagulanyi is at a huge advantage as regards to this coming election. One, young people have for so long been marginalized and they were never involved in these elections. So much as, you know, people were running, politics had been set aside for the elite. So when Honorable Kyagulanyi ran for parliament about 2 years ago, one of his first messages was register to vote. If you want to change Uganda, register to vote. And in his campaign of register to vote, we managed to bring up to 3.5 million new voters. So we already know that we have an additional 3.5 million new voters on the voter rolls due to the Honorable Kyagulanyi's Get Out and Register to Vote campaign. Two, the messaging. The messaging in the previous campaigns and the threats. Museveni hasn't been as peaceful as he claims. We have been under military rule. Northern Uganda had war for over 25 years while the world was, you know, looking on the side. So if those are 20 years out of the 35, he has 15. And every time we've been having elections, for example, Dr. Kizza Besigye, he would run the campaign in and out of prison. Most of the time, he would have trumped up charges brought against him, and he would shorten the time of campaign just the way he has done. So this time around, we have been on doing groundwork since 2016. Okay, ever since he rigged the elections in 2016, we have never stopped. We petitioned in court. The court, you know, we failed to get that, but we stayed on course. And when Honorable Kyagulanyi came on board, he just found, you know, a vehicle that was ready to go. It was like, you know what, let us get onto this. And, you know, young people joined him all across the world, even in the diaspora. So many people are energized. People are making calls to their respective families and friends in Uganda, get out and register to vote, get out and vote, sending them material. There has been a success using online platforms like Facebook to send a message out where, you know, we never thought we would reach. Young people are interconnected regardless of religious, cultural, tribal background. They are interconnected from the east, from the west, north to central. So we are at an advantage with young people.
You getting people to come and register to vote is one thing. Getting them to vote is another. You touched on earlier on the social media, and as we speak right now, the internet connections in the country I wouldn't say are not working effectively, but they're not working up to standard. And if campaigns are not held via national media, i.e. television and radio, you are relying on social media or the internet, and that's not working. How will you be able to reach the young people that you are talking about here?
Okay, I think the message has reached everywhere that Museveni trying to stifle the internet is one of the scare tactics he's using. And once they tampered with it, the messages, went all through across the country. Now people know who is playing with it. And that, that comes to our advantage. If you're talking about a free and fair election, and one of, the ways of modes of communication that had been availed is being cut short. Even somebody in the village will know that this is unfair. This is not the way the country should run. We should go and change this, because it doesn't only affect we in the opposition, even those who support the government. If they say they are cutting off the internet, the government doesn't have the infrastructure to say this one supports the government, should have access, this one doesn't. So all of us are facing the same repression, whether you support the government or not. You are facing the same, repression.
Right. Can we talk a little bit about the actual messaging as well that your leaders, be it the ruling party leader or Kyagulanyi, are forwarding? So Bobi Wine says that change will come from the top should he win this election. At the same time, President Yoweri Museveni is asserting that he's offering stability for the country. So without any kind of bias, could you unpick those two things? What do they mean? And what makes which one resonates a lot with the Ugandans at the moment? Are we talking stability, or are we talking about change that comes from the top? And what does that actually mean?
President Museveni has for so long been promising prosperity and calling us agents of foreign influencers. But as you see, the campaign of People Power and Honorable Kyagulanyi is typically grassroots. It's a grassroots work. However, Museveni has been fully financed by the West. I'm going to give a few examples. Only this year, if we only talk about COVID funds that were, that are being used to the campaigns, Museveni earlier this year received about $491 million from the IMF. He also received $300 million from the World Bank. He also received 15 million from the US State Department, 1.2 million.
Can I just bring you back there? So when we're saying he received, you're talking about funds that were put into COVID relief efforts.
Yes. All those funds that were received for COVID, including the 24 million euros that were received from the EU, all that money had been channeled to his campaign. In the early months of the pandemic, you would see I'd introduced a task force.
Sorry to interrupt you there. Is there any evidence to that?
Any evidence to what?
To prove that the money that has been given for COVID has been channeled to Museveni's campaign. Massive evidence. For example, the people who are supposed to procure medical supplies, that is the family of Sam Kutesa, who is the foreign minister, and is also somebody who has been, who has corruption charges here in New York, in the United States versus Ho case, where he has a corruption charge of $500,000 and Museveni. So that is the family that is in charge of procuring medical supplies that never reached. Yeah, now let's put this into context. Having an allegation of corruption in the United States are two different things of money that's been given for COVID, that money being channeled for campaign. I want you to give us proof so that our viewers will understand the money that has been given to COVID with your allegation. How was it channeled on the campaign? Where was it used and how was it used?
Okay, let me start with the 1.2 million euros that came from the UK. That money was supposed to go to small businesses. As of now, we don't have a program that is trying to help small businesses get money to boost their businesses during the COVID. You would see our hospitals, the type of hospitals that we are having right now. If we received 491 million to up our health services, hire more health workers, all those things have not been done. However, we also have evidence that the vehicles that were supposed to be used to transport COVID patients to be on the task force for COVID, they were now painted yellow. they have been doing the NRM National Resistance Movement campaign. That's where all those funds have gone. In the country like Uganda, where we have 40 million, by the time the pandemic broke out, we didn't have any cases. We had time. We had time to prepare. We had time to prepare medical centers for that. All of that money hasn't been seen. And one more, $10 million that had been given to an organization called Give Directly through the USAID. That money was supposed to be given to poor people, about 150,000 households that are poor. They were supposed to be receiving $25 a month from the month of March, from April to July. Now, what happened when that money came into the Ministry of Finance, it was put on hold. In May, they had already announced that they had given out the first batch. So we kept making calls to the US Embassy to give us, accountability on how this money has been used. And in August, they had to call that money back. $10 million had been stopped. So okay. we have also registered successes in putting a hold on that money.
Okay, let me just explain this to you here as well. President Museveni has been recently accredited as one of the few leaders in Africa that has tackled coronavirus, i.e. you've got less than 40,000 or up to just 40,000 of infections since the pandemic struck. One of the very, very few countries in the world with coronavirus. So, and he's been accredited for being the first leader in Africa to impose wearing masks publicly, where people have to wear masks publicly. And he was one of the very first leaders as well to stop mass gatherings. And your party has also been accused of not respecting the COVID restrictions, i.e. gathering people where they shouldn't be gathering. What can you respond to that?
I don't know who has accredited President Museveni for doing that.
Johns Hopkins University in the United States.
Okay, Johns Hopkins University. For Johns Hopkins University and the government of Uganda have a partnership on public health, which has been going on for years to start with. Two, giving credit to Museveni for stopping COVID. I don't know what threshold they use to measure that this is what Museveni has been doing. For one, when we were receiving these donations from the West, one of the things that the government was supposed to do was to provide at least masks, because masks are expensive on the continent. The government was supposed to provide at least masks. But when those masks were rolled, we see them, it's only government officials who can even afford to buy their own masks that are the ones donning masks for government of Uganda. Two, masks were also politicized. In the early stages, People Power and National Unity Platform, we had massive masks that had been made. We had made, Honorable Kyagulanyi had a song about the pandemic, and guess what happened? They raided the places where we were making those masks. They took the sewing machines, they arrested the people who were making those, and they also confiscated most of our merchandise from the office. So we were stifled. We couldn't, there was no way we could push that. Two, if Museveni is to be credited for the pandemic, you are only going to credit him for taking the money. He has also only been lucky because of circumstances, but there are no measures. There are no measures. If you look at the hospitals that our people are, if you look at the way COVID tests are being made, you have to pay $300, what is it? It's about $100 for a COVID test in Uganda. Just to take a COVID test, you have to pay. So if most people are dying of COVID, but we could call it malaria because it has some signs. And some people are dying of malaria, they are saying it's COVID because the way it spreads, it is different in Uganda. So when you have malaria, sometimes you lose tests. If you have some signs of malaria, more like the signs of COVID, and there has been information on the ground that the government has not really done a good job in having the pandemic controlled.
Okay, thanks a lot for that, Kharim. On the case of again campaigning platforms, President Yoweri Museveni, as I mentioned earlier, is campaigning around stability. He's also campaigning around beefing up the army, obviously to sustain geopolitical influence, but then you also tapped into American partnerships, for example, with Johns Hopkins, but there's also the part where the military support that Uganda and the United States have, especially in tackling Al-Shabaab. How your party is seen as weak on policies around stabilization of the country and in tackling these military challenges. What's your comeback on that one, and what's your feeling on that?
So yeah, he would make that case that we are weak because the army has been personalized.
No, I think that's a general international relations sort of a perception that you're probably weak on that on policies around geopolitical army responses.
Okay, let me speak to that. For starters, our intervention in Somalia hasn't really been on the basis of mutual interest and respect. For so long, we have partnered with the US in fighting Al-Shabaab, but the same Al-Shabaab that we have been fighting what you see on the streets of Somalia is more like you see on the streets of Uganda. Right now, Museveni has outsourced the work of the police to the army. He has brought ranking officers from Somalia to be on the streets of Kampala to police, not even to police, to brutalize Ugandans. So if you say we are weak, I don't know where we are going to get the army. We thought it was a national army, but the UPDF, when Museveni is talking about the UPDF, he actually calls it the original NRA, the original National Resistance Army. It still is army. His son, Muhoozi Kainerugaba, he has gone through rank and file within 10 years. Is now an army general. He controls, the special what is it called? The Presidential Protection Unit, which is the SFC, Special Forces Command. That's his son. So we are a party of the people from the grassroots, local people, the doctors, the teachers, the market vendors. We are not military. We have not been militarized at all. Museveni's army started with abducting children. That's how it started in 1980. It's the children who fought the war, and he has no return on investment to those young kids who went and got arms and fought for him.
So in terms of your military strategy then, just to go back to you telling us today that the army is really Museveni's army. I mean, that's supposed to be a national instrument. It's not supposed to belong to a political party. What's your military strategy in that case, should you win this election?
Okay, going into the election, we are confident that the people of Uganda will stand with us. We are confident that the army at last will know that the will of people outweighs the will of the army. And we are also counting on our international and development partners who have been, bankrolling Museveni, because the donations that we get for education, for health, for helping security forces, all of that money has a small cabal of people that control it, and Ugandans at large don't necessarily benefit from that. So going forward, we are confident that after the elections, the people of Uganda will stand and demand accountability. They will stand and demand for the Electoral Commission to announce what the real results are. We are confident that they will stand up for themselves this time.
Change of tactics here a little bit. There is no denial that your party is very popular in urban areas, but likewise, there is also no denial that Museveni's party is also popular in the rural areas, i.e. the elderly people. But that put aside, according to the Electoral Commission, for any party to become the winner in the country, you must have 50% plus of the vote. So let's say if your party doesn't get the 50% that you require, will you be ready to collaborate with other parties or to unite with other parties or join forces together for the interests of the Ugandan people, i.e. to fight against Museveni?
Yeah, to start with, there has been a narrative that the National Unity Platform and the People Power Movement is only popular in the town centers. However, if you have been following the campaign trail, we have been stopped on every route we took. We have been stopped on water, on land, and in air. I should say that. So many young people have been coming to our campaigns in places you never imagined, in northern Uganda, in deep places of Karamoja, and people are sending the same message. They need change. You have places like Karamoja where we have minerals, and when those minerals are finally, extracted, the people on ground don't get to benefit from them. So those are the young people that are standing up with us. It is not only in towns, I'm telling you. When we went to the island, he almost sent a battalion to arrest our campaign agents before we even hit the venue. So this narrative that, National Unity Platform is a new party and it's only popular in the urban areas, no. Our voices might roar more in the urban areas, but the message of change and what young people want resonates. All young people in Uganda are longing for change. And we had a meeting yesterday. There was a meeting of heads of principals from the different parties. We have been talking about uniting our forces as the opposition, and the talks are still going on. Sooner or later, we will work out a plan as the opposition.
You mentioned earlier that your leader, Mr. Kyagulanyi, grew up from a working class background, i.e., as many people will say, he came from the ghetto background, if I'm allowed to say that. But growing up in the...
I think quite liberally, he's famously called the Ghetto President, so I think it's a comfortable one, that one, yeah.
Okay. So growing up in that side or coming from that side is one thing, but when you get to power, it's another thing. And Uganda has got one of the most expensive elections across the world, i.e., if you are wanting to become an MP, you have to spend quite a lot of money. And that loyalty still lies with Museveni as well. And according to predictions, even if Bobi Wine does become a president, he will lose parliament because there will be so many MPs from the other side of the party. Let's say for those who are spending quite a lot of money to become MPs or to become councillors, how will Bobi Wine be able to change that narrative in that country, to change everyone's perception, to change politicians like MPs who have spent quite a lot of money where they will be aiming to get back their money? How will we be able to change things so quickly?
I believe that when we win, even in parliament, there are so many people within the ruling party that don't support Museveni, but because they are there to get a check. But when it comes to ideas of rebuilding the country, of bringing the country together, I think we have a common ground when it comes to the message. Most members of parliament would love to change things. So if Museveni doesn't win, we have a chance. There is a chance that the members of parliament, because most of those who side with Museveni have been siding with him because he was bankrolling them. Before a bill comes on the floor, some money is sent into their accounts. So if that money is no longer coming, and we are talking about national development, I'm pretty confident that we have so many members of parliament who will be switching from the ruling party to join us, or not only joining us, but also deciding to work together, to find common ground and working together and rebuilding the country. So the country doesn't stop with Museveni, the country still moves on.
Whatever the outcome, sorry, before Tchiyiwe just come in there, whatever the outcome of the election, is your party ready to accept the results?
Did you say whatever the outcome?
Yeah, I mean, like if your party loses the result, or if the Electoral Commission says you didn't win, any other, will you be able to accept?
What I can say to that is we have entered into this fight, which has been unfair. There is still so much to to ask for. Even when we are going into the election, you know, our agents are being over the night pulled out from their houses. I think we have 2 people that disappeared by this morning. So many of our agents are disappearing, and we don't know by Thursday how many we will have. And I'm not sure that the people of Uganda will be willing to accept the results if we have been, you know, our hands are being tied. We can't go to the ballot paper when your hands are tied, when a huge number of your supporters are being put behind bars. You know, we cannot. That's not an acceptable outcome. You have to level the playing field. You have to level the playing field. You have to make sure at least there is reasonable, you know, there are grounds that are leveled to have this election successful.
Do you see a situation where, I mean, you talked about members of Museveni's party, parliamentarians, for example, defecting to join you guys, and then some of them retaining their membership of their party, but working in partnership with yourselves. Do you see a complex situation where people will not, your electors, should you win, will not be pleased with you actually having people, embracing people who are defecting from other political parties because they'll be coming in with policies that have already failed them, policies that they've already rejected? You sound like you're very ready to embrace them, though. That's a bit concerning.
I mean, even within the NRM, most of the members of parliament have no voice. They are there, but in hostage. We talked to some of them, and you would listen the fear that they have if Museveni is running as a party leader, unopposed. If you try to oppose him, it's, you know, he has been unopposed for the last, I mean, what, 3 times. His party always fails to get somebody to stand against him. But we have registered successes where members of the NRM party have moved to side with the opposition, especially during the change of age limit debate. Some members of parliament from the ruling party were like, no, we can't do this. So most of the bills that have been passed on parliament, some people just sign on for group work to please Museveni. But like I said, the country doesn't end with Museveni. We have to wake up. We have to think about national building. We have to think about nation building. And I would appeal to them. I would appeal to them to stand with the people. I would appeal to them to join ranks with the progressive voices in the country. I would appeal to them to not to be very partisan, to side with a progressive movement, and, you know, steer this country out.
With the people, perhaps a better way to phrase it. Side it with the people, maybe. Okay, you were muted there, but I think you said yes. So before Baillor concludes the show, I'm just going to ask you around one question. So you woke up on the 15th of January 2021. Your party and Bobi Wine are elected into, well, this is hypothetical because I think results do take long in most African countries to be heard. But let's say you wake up hypothetically in a situation where you are the party in government. What are the first few things the country should expect from you? Why should people vote for you? What would they be expecting to see almost immediately?
Thank you so much. One of the things that we are looking at is a people-centered government. The government that we have is in the hands of a few. We want to make sure that the government gets back to the people. We have to make sure that we separate the legislature from the executive from the judiciary. We have to make sure that these institutions are independent. 2, our health sector has to be revamped. We are considering investing more in our health sectors and working with development partners to see that, you know, we revamp our health sectors. Education sector has been failing. That's one of the things that our campaign has been talking about, starting from, you know, elementary to university. We need to change course. We need to bring in a syllabus that is, you know, 21 21st century, pro-21st century. 3, our mineral resources, our natural resources and land. There has been an expansive eviction of land from Ugandans. We have seen the government and people in the NRM have been evicting people on their lands on a massive scale. And we want to make sure that people regain, we find the ways of land ownership. That is really important, plus our mineral resources. The third thing is going to be international relations. We have been in Uganda, but the countries around us haven't been stable for a while. And you would realize that most of the conflict in our neighboring countries, we have been involved. We have been involved in Congo, involved in Rwanda, and in South Sudan. We want to make sure that, there is good integration. For example, we owe Congo $11 billion for destabilizing peace in Congo in the early 2000s. And when that happened, it was Museveni and his army that went to Congo, they stole minerals, but it's going to be on the backs of Ugandans to pay. So we are looking forward on creating friendships with our neighboring countries and develop together. On a global basis, we intend to have a mutual working together with international partners on the basis of mutual interest and respect. Most of our international partners have been more looking at their national interest than the interest of Ugandan people. So we want to cultivate a relationship where real Ugandans benefit from the bilateral agreements from that we sign with different countries.
And just before we wrap up, we've seen recently many African countries have been calling on their fellow citizens who lives in the diaspora to come and invest in the country or work in the country. Is that something that your party will be looking at, to call on the diaspora, especially people like you, to go back to Uganda so that you can move forward in terms of moving the economy forward and also bringing various expertise and diversify the economy?
Oh yeah, the Ugandan diaspora is pretty much big. For example, the National Unity Platform and People Power as a movement, we have been working with so many Ugandans across the globe. Actually, we have about 34 chapters all across the globe. So these are young people who are so passionate about their country, who are willing to go back and work together to rebuild the country. We have been seeing what Museveni has put us through the past 10 years. He has been exporting Ugandans to the Gulf countries to work as maids in conditions that are hostile. We want all our friends to come back home to work together to rebuild our nation. So yes, we are ready to go back. We have so many Ugandans who have been successful abroad who would want to invest. However, the environment in Uganda right now is not conducive for an indigenous Ugandan investor. But it's okay for the Chinese, but for the Ugandans, it has been really hard for them to do that. So we are looking forward to having many Ugandans return home and invest in the country.
What about you, Kharim? Are you going to be serving in a Bobi Wine government? Should that happen?
Should that happen? I've been working in civil society for a long time. I started working in civil society when I was 19 as a volunteer in peace building and conflict transformation. I used to work in northern Uganda. So I am happy still working in the civil society, being an activist and talking about change and progressive ideas. But I mean, it would be an honor to serve my people. Yeah.
Well, we leave it at that, unfortunately, due to time. But all I will say, we hope and pray. We pray for Uganda to have whosoever is going to benefit Uganda and benefit Africa, may that person win. Whosoever is going to bring peace and stability and help the Ugandans, may that person win. To our viewers, thank you very much for watching this week's show. This show was presented by myself, Baillor Jalloh, and my colleague, Chihana.